Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ivory Coast begins 3 days of mourning after at least 18 people are killed in the country's first ever jihadist terror attack. Sunday's violence saw half a dozen gunmen open fire on a popular tourist beach resort. Over a dozen people have died in Uganda in the wake of last month's presidential and local elections. The polls sparked clashes between supporters and opponents of President Yoweri Museveni. And the tragic death of a mother and her twin babies, reportedly on the steps of a Cameroonian hospital, has sparked healthcare protests in the country. The family were reportedly turned away because the pregnant woman couldn't pay. First, Monday saw the death toll from a terror attack in the popular tourist spot in Ivory Coast climb to at least 18. The country's ordered 3 days of mourning and tightened security in the wake of Sunday's deadly assault on the beach resort of Grand Bassam. Monday evening, the country's president tried to reassure Ivorians about their safety.
We are doing everything we can to ensure the Ivorians' safety and that of everyone living in the country. I am asking all of you not to give in to fear. You can all carry on with your lives because our security forces have the situation under control and the safety of the whole country is being assured.
At least half a dozen gunmen are thought to have opened fire, and the bloodshed was claimed by Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. This was the first jihadist terror attack suffered by Ivory Coast. Our correspondent sent us this report.
Abandoned clothes left in a hurry. A visible reminder of the panic which gripped beachgoers in Grand Bassam on Sunday. A day after the terrorist attack, a few people who were there decided to return to the beach despite their nerves and their anger.
I was so scared. I told myself as I got home that I would never go to the beach again. It was traumatizing.
We're really scared because we don't know when it will end. We didn't see the shooters clearly. We don't know how many they were. They could be among us and we wouldn't know. We want better security. We need help. We've had enough. We're tired.
On the beach, the tourists are gone, replaced by security forces. The investigation into what happened is still in full force. Forensic teams and specialist units are working to safely deactivate grenades that were found on the beach. Meanwhile, residents here are worried about the future.
Bassam is part of our country's heritage. It's even a World Heritage Site. A lot of tourists come here. But with these attacks, they will be scared and they won't come anymore. It's a heavy blow to Bassam.
This is the first terrorist attack ever to take place on Ivorian soil. It's shaken those in this little seaside town to the very core.
Well, Ugandan authorities say that at least 22 people have been killed in recent clashes between rival political groups. Unrest began gathering momentum after presidential and local elections in February. And since then, opposition supporters have faced off against security forces and regime loyalists. President Yoweri Museveni, who's been in power for 3 decades, won last month's presidential vote, but his rivals have rejected the results. Our regional correspondent, Duncan Woodside, was there for those polls. He joins us now. Duncan, so are these clashes that we're talking about today likely to continue?
Well, perhaps unlikely, at least over the short term. These clashes that we're talking about are very much localized. The majority of those who died, 16 died in Bundibugyo district in western Uganda as a result of a dispute between a ruling party candidate and also an independent candidate over a local election result, so not related to the presidential elections and very much localized. Now, in the other main incident, 6 people were killed in Kasese district in confrontations between the police and opposition supporters. Now, what the police are saying is that those opposition supporters were menacing them with with sticks and machetes, and they responded. What the relatives and friends of those who died are saying is that that was excessive force. The police obviously using guns to quell that protest. So Two very different incidents. They fit into a pattern whereby these elections have not gone smoothly, but it's unlikely that there will be significant violence going forwards, especially when the main opposition candidates are challenging the results through the courts rather than on the streets.
Now, on that front, the opposition says that it has video evidence that vote rigging took place. What is this proof of irregularity that they plan on using before the courts?
Well, indeed, yes. One of the opposition presidential candidates, Mama Mbabazi, his court case began at the Supreme Court today. He'll have 2 days to present evidence, and then the respondents, which include lawyers for the president and the Electoral Commission, will have 3 days to rebut those claims. Now, one of the main claims is that there was a presiding officer in Hoima district who was instructed by those higher up the chain in the Electoral Commission to pre-tick ballots in favour of President Yoweri Museveni, and it's claimed that there is video evidence of that happening in a context where other presiding officers were also allegedly told to pre-take ballots. Now, that's something, obviously, that Mbabazi is relying on heavily. There are other aspects to the case, and we shouldn't forget that these elections have been very much criticised by international observers. We'll have, over the next few days, obviously, the evidence presented, and then the Supreme Court is expected to give its verdict on the validity of the claims and the petition against the Electoral Commission by the end of this month.
Thanks very much. Duncan Woodside there for us. Now, the failings of Cameroon's healthcare system have been thrust into the spotlight after a pregnant woman and her unborn twins reportedly died on the doorstep of a hospital because she couldn't pay. Officials have denied that staff refused to treat her, but the case has sparked protests in the capital on Sunday.
This amateur footage prompted outrage in Cameroon. It allegedly shows a pregnant woman and her twin babies dying in a hospital courtyard in the capital Douala. The health ministry said she was already dead when she arrived at the hospital. But witnesses claim she was alive and was denied treatment. They also say a female relative tried to save the babies.
This woman was incredibly brave. She's a heroine. She found a blade because the babies in her womb were still moving. It shows they were still alive even though the woman passed out.
Sunday, several hundred people protested in the capital. This sign reads, "Never again, not in my country."
We can't let our fellow Cameroonians die. We can't let those who can't afford medical treatment die in our hospitals. Enough is enough.
This is so sad that a woman who was about to give birth found her death. This should not happen. It happened to her. Tomorrow it could happen to us if we don't put an end to this.
With just one doctor for every 40,000 citizens, access to healthcare is a major issue in Cameroon. According to the World Health Organization, Cameroon has only a quarter of the doctors it needs.
Well, we head next to Nigeria and the infamous floating slum of Makoko. The village is in a lagoon in the heart of Lagos and is home to around 100,000 people, most of whom live in houses built on stilts. Getting public services to the community is a problem. In a bid to at least invest in children's education, a waterborne school has been launched.
Navigating the school system in the Venice of Lagos, one of Nigeria's most famous slums. These are some of the lucky students enrolled in Lagos's brand new floating school. Not only does it float, but it's also free.
This school, I have never seen any school floating on water before. This is the only one that I've seen. That is why I forced my parents to take me to this school. I like this school.
I like it because it's present by our house, only on water, and coding the environment to learning and clapping and jumping and singing.
The school is made of locally sourced wood and recycled plastic barrels. It's environment friendly and built to endure the capital's many floods and storms.
During October to November, the water level in the community do rise very well, and it do affect the existing structure. Whenever the water level rise, it rise, and whenever the water level goes down, it goes down.
This is a floating slum, but a slum nonetheless, with no power grid and no sewage system. Most residents come from other Western African countries and settled here in hope of a better life. The floating school might bring just that, at least to a few children.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Do stay with us, though. A short break and more coming up.